Wargaming just took the players' most favorite tanks and reworked them into some seasonal tanks for this update. So we've got the E-10 instead of the E-100 at tier 10, which is the entry tank at tier 7. Then we've got the Death-STR, which represents the 183. And then we've also got the KV-JR or KV Junior, maybe, I don't know, which will be a tier 9 tank, which of course represents the KV-2 at tier 6. So let's go for a quick tank review, because I think those tanks are definitely worth looking at. To start with, we've got the E-10, which is just sharing a lot of characteristics with the E-100, and mostly by the looks of it you can already see it does have this big gun, it does have this chunky turret, but it does also have some very different playstyle in some regards here. We'll get to that in a bit. Let's talk about the armor for a quick moment here, because that is definitely worth looking at. The E-10 does have a ton of armor actually. The front is really well armored, but it does have a huge lower plate, which is even bigger than on the E-100 itself. Here you will get penetrated with every single shot, yeah, that's for sure, but the turret, you can see me just being like virtually in an E-10, shooting an E-10. Even if I switch to premium ammunition, it is almost entirely red. So there's only this little part here right beneath the turret which can be penetrated then, but most people don't even use calibrated shells, they don't use premium ammunition at all, so they will not really penetrate you there. But don't think it's completely invincible, which becomes very obvious when I'm switching to like the worst tank to face basically. With this tank is a tier 8 tank, which you're also going to look at if you're playing at tier 7, and this is the ISU 152. Just some big alpha TD, and suddenly you see that this huge turret is completely green, completely penetrable for the ISU, and especially then with the premium ammunition. Of course, everything is just green here. There is not much that the E-10 can hold up against here. And I think that's what you definitely have to keep in mind with this tank. So if you are high tier, or just, yeah, if you're not facing any tier 8 tanks, then you are insanely well armored, but at the same time you're not having any armor in the lower plate against higher tier tanks, then you might struggle a lot more though, especially with this large hull there. It's fairly easy to penetrate then, so be mindful of that. Otherwise, I can highly recommend just playing this tank hull down and also side scraping. That is what the E-10 excels at. But you will struggle to get into those positions because you're just having a rather poor mobility, and especially the traverse speed is something that can be very, very frustrating, because it currently does have one of the worst traverse speeds available. But still, I found my games to be fairly easy with this tank. You do have a 400 alpha damage gun if the tank is fully equipped, and also you're just having decent accuracy. You're just going to be able to fight the enemies quite easily, quite often, and you're going to hit your shots. You don't have a good DPM, but this tank is mostly played for the armor that it has. Again, only when you are on a higher tier. But to be honest, the E-100 or E-10 isn't even that mentionable to me, because we are getting to the highlight already for me, which is the Death-STR. And the Death-STR is not exactly like the 183 at tier 10. It does not come with a big gun putting out 1k damage or so, not even close to that. You have to think of it being something completely different, because it does have some similarities in the kind of the hull just form factor of it, but at the same time it is an autoloader. It does have 3 shots of, let me have a quick look, 3 shots of 310 alpha damage, but it does have hash shells as a premium ammunition, which means you can just penetrate a lot of sides with hash, which increases your damage to 370 damage. Or with the HE you're getting up to 420 average damage per shot times 3. That is definitely a lot, and you might, especially with the max rolls of 525, might then get to really put out, just clip an entire tier 7 tank actually. And I personally found myself to have a lot of fun with this tank, also because it is super mobile, it is very agile. You can just roam around the map and find some areas to maybe flank the enemies, shoot them into the sides. You can also support them from your teammates from a distance. Definitely for sniping it also works. Good accuracy, good mobility, and also a little bit of armor still. if you're looking at the armor here with a tier 8 heavy tank, which is an IS-3 in this case, you can see it's fairly green. You're getting penetrated quite a lot. But still, if you do angle the turret and wriggle around, you do get some ricochets, definitely as well. Although I would really not count on that. It's not a tank to be played for bouncing off enemies' shells, so it is maybe rather a tank for the better players. But I think this might be the most fun tank destroyer I've played in a while, especially on lower tiers here. I really think this one is like the highlight of this season here. Oh, and before I forget it, we're also having the KV Junior, the tier 9 heavy tank, which is the KV2 brother. Like, yeah, it just looks very similar and also has a big gun, of course. You're having an alpha damage of 630, which is close to the highest you could get at tier 9. And you're actually having the biggest damage per shot of any heavy tank at tier 9 here. And you're also still having a decent accuracy, so I did like that. But at the same time, it does have a very poor DPM of 20 seconds of real lower time, which is quite hilarious. And still, you're not having a lot of HE penetration, so don't expect to just HE the opponents like you would do with the Smasher or the KV2 itself. This tank is mostly benefiting from the great penetration, great accuracy and the high alpha damage, so you can out-trade literally everything, but also you will get penetrated quite often, but at the same time you don't have to peek a lot of times. But do not play this tank hull down, because the armor profile really isn't that great. If you do take a closer look at the armor, you notice there's a lot of green to the front here, which is really not that great for a heavy tank. You still have a troll gun mantlet, which is fairly large, so you're getting some ricochets off of that definitely as well. But still, you can really not aim carefully and just sit there in front of the enemy, not expecting to get shot in return. So please just be a little bit sneakier with this playstyle and try to work around the middle area as well, like you would do with some autoloader, for example, and don't necessarily see or just look at the enemies frontally. Although with the high alpha damage and good accuracy, that definitely also works. Yeah, I think this is a tank that can be played. It did somehow work out, but the DPM is really just a bit of a disadvantage here. The look of all these tanks is a little bit debatable. Some will love it, some will hate it. That's for sure. It's a bit of a cartoony fantasy style here to the tanks, not really a realistic camo to any of these tanks in the season. But I think just for the playstyle, I do think that many of these tanks, especially the Death Star, have something very special to offer to us. So I wish you a lot of fun with those tanks. Hopefully this little review helped you already. With that, I would say thanks for watching. This is Nino. See you on the next stream. Goodbye.